Hi everyone, I'm Mara Webster from SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and we are here today for another one of our conversations at home. As a quick reminder, we are continuing to raise money for our COVID-19 fund, which is working to support SAG-AFTRA members who are currently out of work due to all of the closed productions. The link for this is below the video, so please click on it and consider supporting if you're able to. I'm really thrilled today to be having this conversation with Sidney Flanigan around the film Never Rarely, Sometimes Always. Sidney, I feel like this has been such a unique journey for you. It was your first narrative feature already and first time doing this whole journey of promotion and supporting the film, and you're in such a unique position where the film was being released theatrically the same week that everything started to shut down. So I was curious how that whole journey has just been for you day to day, changing everything that you had planned in place and connecting to audiences in different ways.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting to navigate, seeing as especially this is my first time ever doing anything like this, at all. So it's like, it's new for not just me now, but everybody, because it's these uncharted waters of like, well, what do we do? We've just been doing a lot of these virtual types of things, and just, utilizing social media to our advantage, and just trying to like talk to people and message people and just try to get the word out there about the film. It was pretty strange for all this to start happening. It was kind of a bummer that we won't be getting the theatrical release. But it is what it is, and just kind of had to accept that and move forward, as best as we could.
Yeah, and hopefully because everybody's at home, it gives, audiences that might not have had the film playing at a cinema near them a different way to discover. I also love, I saw that you guys did a great online event the other night where it was, a Q&A, but also you were bringing your music into the forefront of that. And I was curious how that event went and how that all came together.
Yeah, that was really fun. It felt really cool it felt really natural because music was kind of like, what I was doing prior to being in this film. So it was really nice doing something that made me feel like really truly in my element. Acting has been a very new form of expression for me. But I've been really excited to dive into it and to like kind of, navigate it and, and just kind of explore it.
Yeah. I was also curious, being that music has been, something that you've been doing for such a long time. And since this was your first foray into acting, kind of how that allowed you to really naturally connect to your character and find the emotional beats, because obviously you're used to stepping onto stage and having an emotional connection to storytelling and having a persona in front of an audience. So how did those two really meld together for you?
Yeah. I mean, you said it pretty well about like the whole stepping on the stage and, kind of performing, and that helped, that kind of transferred over, and that helped. A lot of it too was kind of, it was so new to me and I didn't have any conventional training whatsoever. So a lot of it just kind of came from like my own truths and my own experiences. And so now I'm at a point where I'd really like to develop the skills to be able to, to be able to deliver a performance without necessarily traumatizing myself. Not necessarily digging into tapping into all of my own personal experiences, because I mean that's emotionally draining. So I've been really interested in developing how to do it outside of that necessarily. But being a musician's really helped. I've always been a very kind of like a very emotional performer, which some might call emo, whatever you will. But I guess it helps,
It serves the purpose and works really well for this film. I also wanted to ask you a little bit about when you first flew out and auditioned with Eliza Hittman, who's the writer-director of the film, because you had kind of known her peripherally a little bit several years before, and she was really interested and had this idea of you in the role, but obviously not having acted before. I know that you were a little reticent and unsure about whether that was something that you wanted to do and something that you wanted to step into. What was that tipping point that made you decide that you were going to jump on that plane and audition? Because it wasn't even that you had the job. If you said yes, you still had to put yourself forward for it.
Yeah. I mean, once I had finally even decided to like go on tape for it, I mean, I really liked the script, and I don't know that after sitting with this idea for a little time and like, I talked to my friends about it. I was like, I've been offered like this audition. And once I talked to my friends about it, they were kind of just like, why wouldn't you do that? Like, and I was just kind of like, yeah, they're right. You know, like, why not try? Like, what's the hurt in trying? And it just seemed like a really powerful story. So it seemed like, you know, it was like, this would be a really, really great opportunity to do something that feels like, that would make me feel so useful, while also like, because sometimes when you're so focused on one craft like music, it's easy to get a little burnt out. And I was like, maybe I should, try something else to, kind of like, just expand. And so I was just like, I'm just gonna try. And I went and auditioned, and I really didn't think I was actually going to get it. And then when I got the call, it was just like, wow, like, this is so, like, I'm in this now. Like, all right, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Yeah, I also love the way that Eliza does her casting process in a very non-traditional way. And she took you and Talia Ryder, who's your co-lead in the film, like, out and about in the streets of New York, and really put you in the places that your characters were going to be. And so how is the uniqueness of that experience, and how did that really help the two of you to forge that bond right from the beginning on day one?
Yeah, with like Talia and I remember like when I was in New York and we were casting for the role of Skylar, and I was reading with a lot of different girls, and there's a lot of great people that came through, but I just wasn't really like connecting on a personal level with a lot of them. And like, Eliza would do this thing where she'd pretend to, like, she'd be like, oh, I'm going to the bathroom, and she'd leave, and so she can like come back and see if the other girl and I had established a dialogue. I was like, oh, you're sneaky, Eliza. But yeah, but I remember when Talia came into the room, she was like one of the last auditions, and I was just like, oh, this girl seems cool. Like, I don't know, it was just like this moment where I was just like, yes. And then we started talking, and we both found out that we were both from Buffalo, so like, we had this like hometown type of thing going on. And yeah, and then like how Eliza took us out, like, and just like auditioned us, like, doing stuff on the subway, like, it really helped, because now that I've been self-taping auditions since after this film, and it's a much different thing, because you're just like sitting in your house, and you're like very still, and it's like different, and you don't have the environment to really work with. So it was really nice that Eliza did those types of things, because it helps take you out, like, it takes the pressure off, you know what I mean, doing it in this more unconventional way. And it helps you, I feel like, just really get into it. So yeah, it was a totally cool, interesting experience. I'm not sure if I'll ever have one like that again with the director. Who knows? Eliza was certainly someone special.
Yeah, it's such a rarity. I'm glad that you got that at the beginning of your career. I was also interested in how going out into those physical spaces that are ultimately in the film helped you once you then were back home and just preparing for the script and preparing to come onto set, because then you have such a clear idea of what the film's going to look like, what it's going to film like, and the spaces that your character is going to be experiencing all these scenes in.
Yeah, I mean, everything happened really fast. I mean, pretty much like I got the part, and then I was coming up for chemistry reads and fittings. The next thing I know, like 2 weeks later, we're shooting. So it was like, and we only had 2 days to rehearse. So it was this very fast process, and I had never done this before. So I just kind of jumped right in. And the 2 days, we kind of like, we went over the scenes with Eliza in her apartment, and just kind of like mostly did like bonding exercises and stuff. Like Talia and I, like, she had us like kind of read through some of the scenes, like, while doing each other's makeup and stuff, to create this like intimacy. And
like, there's a great Instagram clip that she just posted the other day of one of those scenes as well.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, oh wow, it's so weird seeing this now, because it feels so far away, even though it was only like a year ago, but it feels like ages ago to me. But yeah, we just kind of had that, and then every day, like, once we finally started shooting, like, every day was a new experience, like every single day, especially because we were in a different place every single day. It was never like, it wasn't like a set, we were like traveling to different spots in the city, and it was just like, it felt like this like moving carnival sometimes, and it was so strange, but it was just definitely so exciting and like interesting.
Yeah, and I love part of the process as well was that she gave the two of you journals with questions that you wrote the answers, and even Eliza wasn't in the room for it. She doesn't know to this day like what you wrote in there, what you shared with each other, and how did that part of the process really help the two of you forge what their relationship would be, because they're cousins, but there's such an intimacy, and there's such loyalty and friendship there below the surface as well.
Yeah, I mean, the things in those prompts were pretty personal. So, I obviously wouldn't expose what they were because there's something that like, but there was like something in there that was like one of the questions were something that like that individually Tali and I can relate to, but it was something that we can also connect on. And it was just kind of like, like something a little deeper and a little more intense. And I was just kind of like, oh yeah, we do share that. And, like connecting on that. It was something that if I was able to tell you would be like, that makes so much sense. But like, it's too private,
No, I'm glad that you're not you're not sharing it. I think it's beautiful. I also, one of the things that's really interesting about the film and the way that your character story is told is that there's still a lot of questions at the end of the film. We don't know who the father is, how she got pregnant, and there's little tidbits of information that come out throughout the film, but we don't really have a fully formed idea. But it works so perfectly, and for your performance as well, you decided that you didn't want to create that backstory, and I was interested in why that was the decision that you made and why it felt important for you in the way that you prepared for this character in this role.
Yeah, mostly because I think, the story it's not really about Autumn and her life. It's about the circumstance. It's about the journey and the crisis. So like if we start fixating on who the dad is and, why she is the way she is and why this might have happened, it can kind of stray from like, just this idea of like access to abortion. A lot of times people will, this is my personal, perspective, is that a lot of times people will, pick it apart and be like, oh, well, it's because these people came from this, it happened because of this and that. And it's just kind of like, it shouldn't matter how we got there. It's just that they should have this access one way or another. And I think, just focusing on her and her crisis and her journey is really important because we're really just more so interested in the obstacles.
Yeah, and one of the really interesting things as well in the way that you play the journey is she's a very internal character and very quiet most of the time, and kind of I think the most you ever talk is actually in the abortion scene when you're being asked those questions. And was that something that just naturally came from the script, or was it a choice that you made? And also, how did you prepare to play those scenes and figure out the nuances between the lines of the script?
Yeah, that scene was scripted. So I knew everything that was supposed to happen. But mostly, I don't know, I just kind of went into it. It's one of those things like how I spoke earlier on, like, I want to learn how to tap into certain emotions without traumatizing myself. That was definitely a moment where I just kind of like reached inside and like opened that this is a funny analogy, but I really like that cartoon Adventure Time. And they talk about, the one character talks about how he has like the vault in his head, which is where he keeps all his repressed memories. And I was just like, all right, I'm just going to go into the vault, and just kind of see what happens, like Pandora's box, right? Just like everything comes out and, and just try to like harness whatever happened there. Just try to find something that had enough emotional substance to like line up with that moment. So yeah, it was weird because for me, it was like, I'm interacting with, and the social worker was a real social worker. So that was kind of cool. It didn't feel like we were acting so much. It felt like we were having a conversation. Yeah. And I'm during this process, like thinking about my own life a little bit and to unlocking the vault. And then it just kind of released. And then she started asking those questions. And I was just kind of like, all right, I'm just going to let it go. I'm just going to let it out. And it felt like so, it felt really like there's something like oddly therapeutic about that moment for me. That was the first take. Like we tried doing it again and like they were still good, but it just like was not the same as that first one. It was just so, it was a really like, I don't know, like interesting experience. Like, I don't know, just experiencing emotions in this way, like with all these layers.
Yeah, it's such a stunning scene. I was also interested, in the fact that, Eliza did have an actual social worker in that scene, but I know that she kept the two of you apart prior to when you were filming. So I was curious if you had conversations prior to any of the social workers or the Planned Parenthood consultants that were working on the film, or if you really just focused on this journey where she's learning the entire process throughout.
Yeah, I did kind of do that. I mean, like, there were the days that we were on set at Planned Parenthood, I would be meeting people and stuff. And I'd have like, little brief conversations with them, but also at the same time, like we were always so crunched for time. So I was just getting kind of raced around a lot. Like you need to be here, here, there, and that. So, there was limited time for like real in-depth conversations. So I kind of did learn a lot through the process of filming the scenes.
Yeah. Was it logistically a very different type of scene to film to the rest? Obviously you're in a static location, but you're in a really tight space. And I think that there were 2 cameras, if I understand correctly, to make sure that you didn't have to keep doing it again and they could just get all the coverage that they needed. So I imagine that was really different from all the rest of the scenes that you were filming.
I mean, a lot of the time the camera was very close to me. Because you can see that it's very intimate and it's always very close. But yeah, in that scene they had the 2 cameras and they were like right on me, and it kind of it helped with that sense of like vulnerability because I felt trapped. You know what I mean? So that definitely was a good outside factor.
Yeah. Has there been, a lot of response to that scene in particular and the way the audiences have come up to you at places like Sundance and festival screenings and just opened up to you online?
Yeah, I mean, that scene's definitely the one everyone talks about or brings up because I think it's like it's incredibly heartbreaking, and it's really the moment that we finally get to know Autumn for a second, So I think a lot of people relate to that pain, unfortunately, and people empathize.
Yeah. I've also seen you talk a little bit about how the making of this film kind of coincided with the fact that you felt like personally it was important to be a voice for abortion rights and how that's been for you and kind of navigating that totally new landscape and really taking that platform that you have the opportunity to have right now and harnessing it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, like there's a responsibility. I think anybody with any sort of platform, I feel like if you have a platform, you should be talking about something, of importance. Because, those are the people with the platforms are the ones influencing other people. People are looking up to them to, for ideas and such. And like, you know what I mean? Like, I only want to be able to provide like, real support and advocacy for, there's a number, reproductive rights and access is so important to me. So like when I was presented with this project, I was kind of like, well, yeah, I'm on board with that. There's an array of issues I can talk about all day. And I just think it's important for people to talk about things.
Yeah. And then also I wanted to ask about, the whole journey for you as a performer and as an artist through making the film and the way in which the process of making this film and learning what some of the new abilities that you have are and, you did such an amazing job in it and it's such a beautiful performance, but how that's really opened up a newfound confidence in the things that you've learned about yourself as an artist and as a person, both for taking forward to future projects as an actor, but also through your music as well.
Yeah, I've definitely found a new confidence with this. Before I was like, I've always been a musician, but I've always been like one of those like introverted musicians. Like I kind of like hide, like I'm shy, but like then when I go to play music, all of a sudden it's just like, wow, she's really loud, So that was always like my tool for like connecting to others. But now that I've done this movie, I feel like I've really developed like more endurance and resilience and confidence. And now like as a musical performer, I feel like I can be a little more extroverted and performative. Because I've always really admired musicians that can be more theatrical with their performances. And I would always imagine myself getting up on stage and doing that. But the moment I would get up on stage, I'd just be kind of like, I'm going to play some songs. And I just kind of like go into it and try not to talk as much as possible. So this has definitely helped me give a little more, kind of like I can talk a little more on stage now. Like, and I'm not, because like once you have spent 2 months in front of the film crew every day with cameras on you doing all sorts of weird intimate things, you're just kind of like, whatever, I don't care anymore. Like you're just like that vulnerability is much easier to deal with.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited to see what you do next in both of those creative realms. And I hope that everyone watching this will check out Never Rarely, Sometimes Always, which is available on video on demand and is such an important movie, I think, at any point, but especially right now. And thank you so much, Sidney, for taking the time to chat with us today. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for having me. It's really nice.